Let me tell you something about the day I accidentally insulted the most feared CEO in the country and somehow ended up with his umbrella, his private elevator code, and eventually, catastrophically, wonderfully, his heart. But first, some context. My name is Ren Asahi. I am 23 years old, 5'8", and have been told by multiple people, friends, enemies, and one very exasperated HR representative, that I have what is diplomatically called an inability to read the room. I prefer to call it asterisk an advanced relationship with honesty. My mother calls it exhausting. My best friend Yuki calls it a personality disorder with comedic applications. I call it a gift. I work, or rather, I worked, before everything that is about to happen as a junior interior design consultant at Mori Group's in-house creative division. If you have not heard of Mori Group, you have been living delightfully off the grid, and I am genuinely envious of you. Mori Group is one of those corporations that has its fingers in so many industries that you essentially cannot exist in the city without touching something they own. Real estate, hospitality, retail development, architectural consulting. The building I worked in was a Mori building. The cafe I got my morning coffee from was a Mori adjacent lease. The tram I rode was running on infrastructure partially funded by a Mori Group urban initiative, inescapable. That is the word. Mori Group was inescapable. And at the head of all of it, glacially terrifyingly with the energy of a natural disaster in a bespoke suit, was Cale Mori, CEO, 31 years old. Reportedly genius level in 3 industries, cold enough to cause actual weather patterns in whatever room he entered. He had never, as far as company legend was concerned, smiled at a subordinate. He communicated primarily through single-word emails and expressions that lesser men had described as, and I quote directly from the anonymous company review board, like being judged by a very handsome glacier. Asterisk, I had never met him. I worked on the 14th floor. He occupied the top 3 floors of the building like a particularly glamorous storm system. Our worlds did not intersect until the elevator. It was a Monday. I want to be clear that it was a Monday, because Monday is the universe's preferred setting for the kind of events that restructure your entire life without asking your permission first. I was running late, which was unusual for me, and I was carrying 3 things: my bag, a coffee, and a very large rolled presentation board for the Nakamura Hotel redesign pitch that had taken me 4 days and one entire weekend to produce. The presentation board was large enough to be a structural hazard. I had managed to navigate from the lobby to the elevator bank using a combination of lateral vision and faith. The elevator door was closing. I stuck my foot in it. The elevator door opened. Inside was Cale Mori. I know this in retrospect. In the moment, I saw a tall man in a very dark suit who looked up from his phone with the expression of someone who has not been inconvenienced this century and is finding the experience genuinely novel. I did not recognize him. I am saying this clearly so you understand that what happened next was not brave. It was simply uninformed. Sorry, I said, shuffling in sideways with my presentation board. The board immediately occupied approximately 40% of the elevator. Could you? I gestured vaguely at the man with my coffee hand. Can you just shift a little to the left, just slightly? He looked at my coffee hand. He looked at the presentation board. He looked at me. He shifted approximately 1 centimeter to the left. Then that, I said pleasantly, another centimeter. Not asking you to relocate internationally, I said. Just yes, okay, that's better, thank you. I pressed 14 with my elbow. Long board, sorry, Nakamura pitch, 4 days of my life in this tube, which is a sentence that sounds much worse than I intended. He said nothing. He was looking at his phone again. I looked at him properly for the first time. The suit, the absolute stillness, the quality of his face, which was all right, objectively a very significant face, sharp and composed and entirely unmoved by the chaos I had introduced into his elevator. You work here, I said. He looked up again. His eyes were dark and entirely without warmth, which I noted with interest rather than alarm, because I was raised by a woman who communicates exclusively through raised eyebrows and sighs, and I have never found emotional unavailability particularly threatening. Yes, he said. Which floor? A pause. Top, I nodded. Penthouse offices, your management. His expression did something very subtle that I could not read. Something like that, he said. Fun, I said. I'm in design. 14, I like it. We have the good windows and nobody executive visits us, so the atmosphere is pretty relaxed. I considered him. Must be intense up at the top though. I've heard the CEO as well. I paused. You've heard what? He said. His voice was even, completely even. Intimidating, I said, which was the diplomatic version. The non-diplomatic version, which Yuki and I had exchanged many times over drinks, was considerably more colorful. Like inspiring levels of intimidating, the kind where people apparently pre-apologize before entering meetings. Something moved in his expression, something very small and very controlled. Pre-apologize, he said. Apparently, I said. The elevator reached 14. The doors opened. I shuffled out sideways with my board. Anyway, sorry for the elevator invasion. Have a very efficient Monday. The doors closed. I made it 3 steps down the hall before Somi, my colleague in the division's primary source of social intelligence, appeared from the kitchen with a coffee and an expression of someone who has just witnessed a natural disaster. Ren, she said in a very specific tone. Morning, I said. Was that? She pointed at the elevator. Did you just come up with? Was that Cale Mori in that elevator? I turned around. The elevator was closed. I thought about the suit, the top floor, the expression. Oh, I said. Tell me, Somi said with the controlled urgency of a person managing a crisis, that you did not say anything about the CEO to the actual CEO. I thought about asterisk inspiring levels of intimidating and asterisk pre-apologize. Asterisk I'm going to need you to define anything. I said the general consensus among my colleagues once the elevator story circulated, and it circulated within the hour. Because 14 floors of a corporate building have the information dissemination speed of a medieval village, was that I should begin updating my resume immediately. He's fired people for less, said Jun from the desk beside mine with the solemnity of someone delivering a eulogy. He hasn't fired anyone directly, Somi corrected. He does it through Choi, that's somehow worse. Choi was Kale Mori's executive assistant, a man of approximately 40 who wore the expression of someone continuously braced for impact and had allegedly learned to type at double speed specifically because his employer's thoughts moved faster than normal human processing. Nobody actually talks to him, said Hana from across the room. Like normal staff, he walks through a floor and people basically stop, like freeze response. He's a person, I said. Everyone looked at me. He's a very powerful, extremely cold person who probably has emotions somewhere, I said. Also, I don't think I said anything that bad. You called him intimidating to his face, said Jun. I called the CEO intimidating. I didn't know he was the CEO. The distinction, said Somi carefully, may not comfort him. Nothing happened on Monday, nothing happened on Tuesday. By Wednesday, I had largely moved on because the Nakamura pitch went extremely well, and director Fujimoto told me it was the strongest residential hospitality concept she'd seen from a junior consultant. And I was riding that particular high with the shameless enthusiasm of someone who worked very hard and was not above enjoying being told so. On Thursday, there was a company-wide design review. Design reviews at Mori Group's creative division happen quarterly, and were, by general agreement, low stakes, the kind of meeting where the division directors presented progress, and the executive team sent a representative to nod and ask standard questions and relay approval or concerns. The executive team representative was usually VP level. The executive team representative had never, in the recorded history of these reviews, been Kale Mori himself. He walked in at 9:02 and the entire room went a specific quality of quiet that I had previously only experienced during power outages. I was in the back row between Somi and Jun. Somi grabbed my arm hard enough to leave marks. Jun whispered something that wasn't quite a word. Kale Mori sat at the head of the table that the directors had been sitting at, with the easy authority of someone for whom all spaces are naturally his, set a single folder on the table and said, "Continue." Director Fujimoto, to her immense credit, continued. The review moved through 3 divisions in 40 minutes. He asked precise, occasionally uncomfortable questions that people answered with the careful speed of bomb defusal. He looked at the Nakamura pitch materials when they came up, my materials, the 4 days and 1 weekend, and was quiet for a moment. The lighting integration in the lobby sequence, he said. Whose concept? Director Fujimoto looked toward the back row. I raised my hand. Mine. He looked at me. The room looked at me, looking at him. It's ambitious for the budget bracket, he said. It's within budget, I said. I ran the material costs 3 times. The ambition is the point. The Nakamura brand is positioning upward. They need the lobby to do the heavy lifting on first impression. A pause. Fixture sourcing, he said. The Italian supplier has a local distribution partner since 2022, I said. Import cost is essentially domestic at this point. I have the supplier quote if you want it. Another pause. Longer. Send it to Choi, he said. Sure, I said. He moved on to the next agenda item. Zomi's grip on my arm did not loosen for the remainder of the meeting. Afterward in the kitchen, she looked at me with the expression of someone who has survived something they don't fully understand. She started, answered his questions, you argued with him. I provided supporting information for my professional position, I said. That's not arguing, that's competence, she said. Else in that room was trying not to breathe too loudly and you were citing supplier quotes. I poured my coffee. Was I wrong about the supplier quotes? No, she said. That's not the point. What is the point? She opened her mouth, closed it. I genuinely don't know anymore, she said. The supplier quote email I sent to Choi was acknowledged within the hour, not by Choi but by an email from Kale Mori's direct address that contained 4 words, confirmed, proceed with Nakamura, *. Jun framed it. He literally printed it and put it in a small frame on his desk as what he called proof of a miracle. It's a work email, I said. It's a direct email from the CEO, Jun said. Do you know how many people in this company have a direct email from the CEO? How many? Board members and Choi, he said. That's it, that's the list. I looked at the framed email. Huh, I said, that's all you have to say, huh. It's a nice huh, I said. Life continued. The Nakamura project moved forward. I got busy with 2 additional pitches and a complicated client revision situation that consumed 2 weeks entirely and required more diplomacy than I naturally possess, supplemented by what Somi called my aggressive cheerfulness and what clients apparently experienced as disarming. I did not think much about Kale Mori. I thought about him a normal amount. I thought about him a completely reasonable, professionally appropriate amount for someone who had shared an elevator with him once and been in the same meeting room once, and received a forward email from him once, approximately 4 times a day, which is very normal. The second encounter happened 6 weeks later, and it was entirely his fault. Our floor had a rooftop access, technically a restricted area, but the door code had been the same for 3 years and everyone in design knew it, and we treated it as a semi-official break space. It had a good view, a couple of old patio chairs someone had dragged up years ago, and no cell reception, which was its primary attraction. I went up there on a Thursday at lunch when I needed 15 minutes away from a client feedback call that was slowly removing years from my life expectancy. He was already there, standing at the edge of the railing, jacket off, looking out at the city with the quality of someone who had also come here specifically to be somewhere nobody would find him. His sleeves were rolled to the elbow. He had a coffee cup that was definitely cold. I stopped in the doorway. He turned at the sound. We looked at each other. "You know the door code," I said. "I own the building," he said. "Fair point," I said, and walked out to the other side of the railing because honestly I had come here for 15 minutes of sanity and I was not going to sacrifice them. He watched me cross the roof with an expression I still could not fully read, which was annoying because I was usually good at people. "Not going to leave," he said. "I was here first in spirit," I said. "I've been thinking about this roof for 2 hours. I have earned it." Something happened at the corner of his mouth. It was very fast and very small, and I almost missed it. I leaned on the railing and looked out at the city, which was doing its usual beautiful, impossible thing in the midday light. "Bad day?" he said. He was still looking at me with the calibrated attention of someone taking careful measurements. "Feedback call," I said. "You know that specific variety of feedback that is technically phrased as a question but is actually just a statement of displeasure dressed up in punctuation?" He was quiet for a moment. "Yes," he said, "I'm familiar." I looked at him. "Even at your level, the size of the displeasure scales up," he said. "The punctuation remains." I laughed. The laugh surprised me a little, genuine and quick. He looked at me when I did it, and there was that thing at the corner of his mouth again, the small controlled thing that was not quite a smile but was adjacent to one. "Nakamura project," he said after a moment. "What about it?" "The lobby is in construction now. The fixture installation starts next week." He was looking out at the city. "The site manager sent preliminary photographs." "I saw them," I said. "The ceiling light channels need adjustment in the third section. I sent notes to the contractor this morning." A pause. "I know," he said. "I saw your notes." I looked at him. "You read site manager communications for individual projects." "I read things that interest me," he said in a tone that had nothing particular in it except that it was very specifically said. "I stored that and did not examine it." "Lobby is going to be good," I said. "Really good. The client has been difficult, but the space itself," I smiled at the city. "The space is honest. It knows what it wants to be." "Honest," he said. "Some spaces are. They have a personality that wants to come through regardless of what you put in them. The Nakamura lobby has been wanting to be that particular kind of dim, warm, luxurious for probably 40 years. I'm just letting it." He was quiet. "You talk about spaces like they're alive," he said. "They are," I said, "slightly the way anything is alive that a lot of people pour feeling into." City did its beautiful thing. A cloud moved. Somewhere far below, a tram bell rang. "I should go back," I said. My 15 minutes were up and I felt actually considerably better, which I wasn't fully examining either. The client might have sent a follow-up that requires immediate diplomatic response. I pushed back from the railing. "Sahi," he said. I turned around. He was looking at me. "Feedback call," he said. "Which client?" I told him. Something moved through his expression, brief and precise. "Choi will send a note to their account manager this afternoon," he said. "The feedback process on your division's contracts should come through project leads, not direct client calls. It was an administrative error." I stared at him. "You don't have to, it's a process correction," he said. It landed like a door closing, final but not unkind. "Enjoy your lunch." He turned back to the city. I went back inside. In the elevator going back to 14, I stood and thought about that for the entire ride down. Then I thought about the corner of his mouth and the way he'd said asterisk things that interest me with nothing particular in his voice. "Huh," I said to the elevator. The elevator did not have opinions. Yuki's opinion, delivered over ramen at her kitchen table that Friday evening, was considerably more pointed. "He fixed your client call situation," she said. "Process correction," I said. "He personally intervened in a junior consultant's client management situation. It was administrative." "Ren." She put her chopsticks down. Yuki putting her chopsticks down in the middle of a meal was her version of a 5-alarm alert. "He is the CEO of a company with approximately 11,000 employees. He does not personally intervene in junior consultant client management situations. Maybe he's very thorough. Is famously not thorough about individual humans," she said. "He is famously," and I am quoting the 3 different business profiles I've read about him, "operationally focused, interpersonally minimal, and disinterested in individual personnel concerns below director level." "Ate my ramen." "Doing the thing," Yuki said. "What thing?" "The thing where you notice something and then immediately build a very convincing case for why it doesn't mean what it looks like it means." "I'm not doing a thing," I said. "I'm eating ramen." "You are eating ramen and not saying what you're actually thinking." "I ate more ramen." "He's the CEO," I said finally. "Yes." "Barely speaks to people." "Famously, yes. He's known for being, I mean, the Glacier reviews, I've read them." Whatever this is, I said, it's just he's probably like this with everyone who pushes back a little. He probably appreciates directness as a general policy. It's probably just a professional thing. I pointed my chopsticks at her. Don't give me that look. I'm not giving you a look. You're giving me the look that means you've already decided something and you're waiting for me to arrive at it. She picked her chopsticks back up with the serenity of someone who is very right and knows it. I'm just eating ramen, she said. The third encounter was the rain. It was a Tuesday in November. I was leaving the building at 7:15 late because the condo retail project had a deadline complication and I had voluntarily stayed to resolve it because I am constitutionally incapable of leaving a problem unresolved, which is both my greatest professional asset and the reason Yuki once described me as exhausting in a genuinely lovable way. I stepped outside and the sky was doing something dramatic and thorough, not drizzling. Actively raining with the committed energy of a weather event that had made up its mind. I looked at the sky. The sky looked back. We reached an understanding, which was that I was going to get very wet. I did not have an umbrella because I had checked the forecast that morning and the forecast had said partly cloudy and I had believed it because I am apparently an eternal optimist. Here, I turned. Hale Mori was standing 3 feet to my left, having apparently materialized from the building's main exit at the exact same moment I was having my meteorological reckoning. He was holding out an umbrella. A large, black, extremely high-quality umbrella that had the look of something that cost more than my first paycheck. I looked at the umbrella. I looked at him. I looked at the rain. I looked at him again. "Where's yours?" I said. "I have a car," he said in the tone of someone who has not thought about umbrellas in years because the universe arranges itself around him. "You don't need it." 30 feet from the car. I looked down the street. 15 minutes from the tram. "Then take the umbrella," he said. I took the umbrella. He walked the 30 feet to the black car at the curb, got in and was gone within 45 seconds. I stood under his umbrella and watched the car's taillights disappear around the corner and felt the very specific feeling of someone who has just had a simple interaction and cannot explain why it is sitting in their chest like a stone. It was just an umbrella. He had a car. It was logical. He had noticed me leaving. He had been watching the same exit. He had at some point between the building door and the pavement made a decision to say something, but that could be anything. Coincidence. General consideration. Cold CEOs can own umbrellas and distribute them charitably. I walked to the tram under his umbrella and thought about the elevator and the rooftop and things that interest me and a process correction that had freed me from a miserable client call dynamic. I thought about Yuki's look over ramen. I thought, no, it's just kindness. This is just what a considerate person does. That night I put the umbrella by my apartment door and looked at it and went to bed. The fourth encounter, the fifth, and the sixth all happened within the same 2 weeks, which meant the universe had decided subtlety was no longer the appropriate instrument. The fourth was a design presentation to an external client, a hospitality group looking to engage Mori Group's creative division for a resort development that had been arranged at 48 hours' notice and assigned to me by Director Fujimoto because, she said, I was the only person whose client presentation energy matched the brief's ambition. I walked in, gave the presentation, answered questions with the focused pleasure I always felt when a brief genuinely interested me, and walked out. 2 hours later, Choi appeared on the 14th floor. Choi's appearances on the 14th floor were rare enough that Somi whispered "oh no" when she saw him crossing toward us. He stopped at my desk with the expression of someone delivering news he has not been briefed on fully. "Mr. Mori would like your notes on the resort brief," he said. I blinked. "My notes, your preliminary concept notes, whatever you have from the pitch preparation." "I have, yes, those are rough, they're not formatted or anything. He'd like them as they are." I sent them. 37 pages of draft notes and rough sketches and 2 voice memos I'd recorded on the tram while thinking through the main hall flow. I sent all of it because I had been asked and I was professionally confident enough to not be embarrassed by roughness. The response came the next morning. From his direct address again. "This time not for approach to the central courtyard is exactly right. The instinct about natural wayfinding is something we've been trying to articulate on similar briefs for 2 years. I'd like to discuss further. KM**, I read it 4 times, then I forwarded it to Yuki with no comment. Her response was a single character. Which from Yuki, translated to "I told you, you catastrophic oblivious disaster." The fifth encounter was a company lunch. One of those division-wide events that happen once a quarter, and which I attended with Somi and Jun in my preferred configuration of finding good food and avoiding mandatory team-building activities. Mori Group's executive leadership attended these nominally, made brief appearances, and left. Hale Mori made a brief appearance. He moved through the room with Choi behind him and the parting effect that powerful men have on crowded spaces. People shifted without knowing they were doing it. Conversations lowered. A radius of careful attention followed him. I was at the far end of the buffet line in a debate with Jun about whether the event catering had genuinely improved or if we had simply lowered our expectations over time. I was not watching the room. I was invested in the argument. "The spring rolls," Jun was saying. "The spring rolls last quarter were significantly better," I said. I tried one. These are decent. I'm not claiming disaster, I'm claiming regression. Statistically, Jun started. You cannot make a statistical argument about spring roll quality, Asahi. I turned. Kale Mori was standing 2 people away in the buffet line. He was not holding a plate. He was looking at me with the expression I had begun privately to catalog, the one where his face did very little but his attention did quite a lot. Mr. Mori, I said with the equanimity of someone who has decided that panic is an inefficient response to situations. The spring rolls, he said a beat. Decent but regressive, I said. Quality dropped from last quarter, the filling ratio is off. He looked at the spring rolls, he looked at me. Something that small controlled thing happened at the corner of his mouth. I'll have catering review the vendor, he said. On behalf of everyone's lunch expectations, I said. Thank you, he moved on. Jun stared at me. Across the room I was aware of approximately a dozen people who had witnessed this exchange, processing it with the energy of people who had just seen something they couldn't explain. He's going to have the vendor reviewed, Jun said very quietly. He said he would. Because of a comment you made about spring rolls. It was a valid quality observation, I said. Do you want the rest of mine? The sixth encounter was the one that changed things, or rather the one that made me stop lying to myself about what had already changed. It was after hours. Late, the floor was mostly empty. I was finishing the Resort Brief's first full concept document, the one that had grown from Kale's email into something I was genuinely proud of. 90 pages of spatial concept, material philosophy, wayfinding theory, and the kind of design thinking that I usually kept to myself because it went considerably deeper than standard pitch documents and people sometimes found it excessive. I did not find it excessive. I found it necessary. Spaces deserved that kind of thinking. I was so absorbed that I did not hear anyone until a presence materialized at the edge of my desk, and I looked up and had the specific experience of finding a very tall man in a very dark suit standing approximately 3 feet away with an expression that was, for once, slightly uncertain, which was so wrong on his face that it took me a moment to process. Here late, I said. So are you, he said. Live here spiritually, I said. Deadlines are a lifestyle. He looked at my screen. At the pages visible on it, the resort concept, the central courtyard flow, the material narrative I'd been writing about the way light moves through open-sided structures in coastal climates. Is that the full document? He said. Draft 4, I said. I keep finding new things to add, I might have a problem. He nodded at the screen. I turned it toward him. He read, not quickly. He had a way of reading that was the same quality as everything else about him, complete, unhurried, like he was giving it exactly what it required. I watched him read my 90 pages of excessive design thinking with the vulnerability of showing someone the inside of your head and not knowing what they'll do with it. Wayfinding section, he said. Too much, he looked at me. It should be published, he said, separately, as a framework document. It goes beyond this project. I stared at him. Instinct about organic navigation, the idea that people should feel they're discovering a space rather than being directed through it, he said. I've sat in 50 presentations from design firms over the past 3 years and nobody has articulated it this way. It's just how I think about spaces, I said. I know, he said. Something in his voice was different. Not warmer exactly, he didn't do warm. I was beginning to understand the way some climates don't do warm. But more present, more direct. That's the point. We looked at each other across my desk. Why are you here? I said, not rudely, actually wanting to know. At this hour on this floor, a pause. His expression was doing the uncertain thing again briefly before it closed back into its usual composure. Choi mentioned you were still in the building, he said. I let that sit for a moment. Choi mentioned it, I said. Building security sends him occupancy alerts after 8. He mentioned it to you. It came down to 14. A pause. I was on my way out. Your way out is through the lobby, I said. 14 is not between the top floors and the lobby. He looked at me for a long moment. His face did the very small thing that was not quite a smile and was more than nothing. No, he said, it isn't. The floor was empty around us. The city was dark outside the long windows. Somewhere several floors below, a cleaning crew was running a vacuum that we could just barely hear. Been doing that, I said. And I meant the umbrella and the roof and the email about the courtyard and the vendor review for spring rolls and the forward email and the supplier quote confirmation and the process correction and 14 floors that are not on the way to anywhere. You've been doing that for a while, he said. I looked at him. He looked at me. I thought you were just being kind, I said. You know, in a general CEO being thoughtful about company culture kind of way. Good leadership considers all levels kind of way. I see, he said. Very convincing framing, by the way, very professional. Something shifted in his expression. And now I'm realizing that I have never once heard a story about you doing anything for anyone that was not a direct board-level strategic decision, I said. And yet somehow I have an umbrella from you in my apartment. You kept it, he said. It's a very good umbrella, I said, and it was raining. And I stopped. I didn't want to give it back. Honest answer, out of my mouth before the diplomatic filter engaged, which was apparently just how I operated around this particular person. He stepped slightly closer, not crossing anything, but reducing the distance to something that was now very clearly intentional. I don't do this, he said. It was almost quiet enough to be private. I'm aware that's not a small thing to say. I don't manage individual staff situations. I don't go to vendor reviews because someone made a comment about spring rolls. I don't come to the 14th floor after 8 o'clock because building security mentioned someone was still in. Yet, I said. And yet, he said, the vacuum noise downstairs stopped. The floor was very quiet. You know what's funny, I said, because silence of this particular weight made me talk, is that I've spent the last 2 months explaining every single thing you did as just general consideration. Very logical, completely normal CEO behavior. I have built elaborate cases for why nothing meant what it looked like. Now, he said again, the question had the quality of something patient that has been waiting for a while. Now I think I was the last person in this building to figure out something everyone else probably. I stopped. Wait, does everyone else know? A very long pause. Choi may have observations, he said. Choi, I stared at him. Your executive assistant has observations. He's perceptive. Somi on my floor had a very specific look when your name comes up that I thought was just general. I pressed my hand over my mouth. I started laughing. It was the kind of laugh that arrives when the gap between what you thought was happening and what was actually happening collapses all at once. Oh my god, how long has Somi? I genuinely cannot speak to your colleague's observations. She grabbed my arm in the design review, I said. She's been grabbing my arm for 2 months. I thought she was nervous about meeting management. Something happened on his face that was, absolutely unmistakably, a smile, small, brief, controlled, but real. You laughed, I said. I pointed at him. You actually smiled. I didn't. You did. I saw it. That is confirmed and witnessed, and I am telling Choi. You are not telling Choi. I might tell Choi, I said. I was still smiling, the giddy, surprised kind. He was looking at me with an expression that was doing something entirely new, open just slightly at the edges. The way a very well-locked door opens when it finally decides to. Okay, I said. Okay, I need to be a normal adult for a second. By all means, he said. What is this? I said, directly, because it was the question and I was done building careful alternative frameworks for it. He held my gaze. I don't know exactly what to call it, he said. I know that I have read your project notes more carefully than I have read board presentations. I know that I have thought about a conversation on a rooftop more often than I should have. I know that I asked Choi 3 separate times for reasons to be on the 14th floor before I accepted that the reason was simply that you were on it. I opened my mouth. I'm aware it's unusual, he said. Unusual, I said. Yes. Kale Mori feared across 3 industries thinking about a conversation with a junior design consultant. You're not particularly junior, he said. I am hierarchically very junior, I said. I have a junior title. I sit in an open floor plan. I participate in spring roll quality debates. Also, he said, argued supplier quotes with me in a full management meeting, told me to my face that I was intimidating without knowing who I was, and described your professional instincts in a way that changed how I thought about spatial design. He paused. Your many things, junior is the least interesting one. I was quiet for a moment. The city was doing its nighttime thing outside. This is a very strange situation, I said. Yes, he said. We can address the structural complexity, he said. There's significant structural complexity, I said. Yes, he was calm in the way he was always calm, not unfeeling, just steady. The kind of steadiness that is earned rather than performed. I'm aware of that. I've thought about it. You've thought about it. Extensively. I looked at him. He looked at me. The night city glowed through the window behind him. Okay, I said. I have opinions about the structural complexity, I said. Significant opinions, but I exhaled. I also kept the umbrella, which was in retrospect a statement. It was, he said, unintentional statement, still a statement. You're very calm about this, I said. One of us should be, he said, and there was unmistakably dry warmth in it, the kind of humor that lives so far inside composure you almost miss it. Was that a joke? I said. Did Kale Mori just make a joke? I don't make jokes, he said. That was a joke. It was a factual observation about our relative composure levels. That was a joke with plausible deniability, I said. Which is somehow even more alarming. That thing happened at the corner of his mouth again, staying longer this time, closer to real. Need to finish the draft, I said. Tonight I have the formatting pass left. I know, he said, and you need to go home, I said, because it's 9 p.m. and whatever CEO's morning looks like, it probably requires sleep. Probably, he said. So, I said. So, he said. We stood there in the quiet of the 14th floor, in the middle of something that we had both just said out loud after 2 months of extremely elaborate not saying. And the elevator was at the end of the hall, and my draft was on the screen, and the city was outside the window being beautiful, and none of it was resolved or sorted or simple. Dinner, I said. Not tonight. When the draft is done and the resort brief is submitted, and not in the building. He looked at me. Asking me to dinner, he said. I'm proposing a structured occasion during which we address the structural complexity, I said. In a setting where spring rolls are not involved. That was a smile, an actual one, brief and quiet and so unexpected on his face that it landed like discovering an entire room you hadn't known was in the house. All right, he said. All right, I said. He picked up his jacket from where he'd laid it at the edge of my desk. I hadn't noticed him put it there and turned to go. Kale, I said. He turned. Glacier Reviews, I said. The anonymous company ones where people describe you as I'm aware of them, he said. Not wrong exactly, I said, but they're missing something. He waited. Written by people who have only ever seen the room temperature version, I said. They haven't seen the rooftop one. He stood in the dark of the floor with the city behind him, and he looked at me with an expression that was full of something I was only now learning how to name. Good night, Asahi, he said. Good night, I said. He left. The elevator opened and closed. The floor was mine again and the draft was on the screen and I sat back down at my desk and looked at the city for approximately 45 seconds. Then I texted Yuki. I asked the CEO to dinner asterisk her response arrived in 11 seconds. I have been waiting for this text for 6 weeks asterisk the structural complexity, as it turned out, was both exactly as complicated as expected and handled with a directness that I suspected was a function of what happened when someone like him decided something, he told the board. Not the board of directors, the small internal oversight committee that handled executive conduct and conflict of interest protocols. He disclosed that he was pursuing a personal relationship with a staff member outside his direct reporting chain and submitted a formal recusal from any project evaluation, compensation, or advancement decisions relating to my division. He did it before our first dinner. He told me he had done it over the phone with the straightforward efficiency of someone removing an obstacle before beginning a journey. You disclosed to the board before we've even had dinner, I said. It was the appropriate sequence, he said. Most people would have, I tried to think how to phrase it. Waited or been more casual about the initial, I don't do things casually, he said. You've had enough time to know that. I had in fact had enough time to know that. The dinner was at a small restaurant I chose specifically because it was not the kind of place a CEO goes, which meant it was cozy and slightly loud and the menu was written on a chalkboard and changed every week. He arrived on time. He wore no tie. He looked in that environment slightly like someone trying to remember how to be a person outside of a building he owned, and I found it so endearing that I had to look at the chalkboard for a moment to compose myself. We talked for 3 hours. He asked questions with the same quality he brought to reading, full attention, no rush, and his questions were not the usual first dinner questions. He asked what I would design if there were no budget and no client, just a space and a vision. He asked which building I'd visited in my life that had stopped me in the doorway. He asked what I thought made a space feel like it had memory. I asked him why architecture. He told me about a building his grandfather had owned, a small commercial property, nothing significant that had been demolished when he was 12, and how that had been the first time he understood that buildings were mortal, that spaces could be lost, and that the people who built them had more responsibility than they usually acknowledged. That's why you read my wayfinding document, I said. The instinct about spaces having memory. He looked at me across the small table in the not CEO restaurant. Yes, he said. Been thinking about that since your grandfather's building, I said. Suppose I have, he said. I hadn't named it that way before. Restaurant grew quieter around us as the evening went on. We ordered dessert. He tried mine because I insisted it was better than his and he did it with the graveness of someone tasting wine at a formal tasting, and then acknowledged that I was correct with the precise economy of someone who does not offer admissions they don't mean. Funny, I told him. I'm not, he said. You are, but you're internal about it, I said. The humor is there, it's just subsurface, like geothermal activity. He looked at me. Geothermal activity, warm underneath, you just have to know where to stand. Something moved through his expression, the full version of the thing that had been partial for months. Open, real, something that nobody who had written those reviews had ever seen. Nothing like what I expected, he said, not as a criticism. As a fact stated with something like wonder in the place where the words lived. What did you expect? I said. Someone more cautious, he said. When you argued in the elevator, I thought it was nerves. When it happened again in the review, I thought it was inexperience. A pause. Then I thought about it more. I said, it's not nerves, he said. It's not inexperience. You're the most naturally direct person I have encountered in this industry in a decade. He said it with the care of someone who has chosen each word. You don't perform confidence, you don't manage it, it's just where you start from. I was quiet for a moment. Nobody's described me that way before, I said. I suspect many people describe you as too much, he said. Frequently, I said. They are wrong, he said simply. I ate the last of the shared dessert, and looked at this man who ran a company that shaped the physical texture of the city I lived in, who had a reputation built from distance and control, and the specific cold of someone who had learned that warmth, distributed carelessly, could be exploited, who had learned apparently to reserve it, and had then quietly and methodically reversed every behavior associated with that reputation in my specific direction for 2 months. Can I ask you something? I said, yes, he said. Somi, I said. My colleague Somi, she's been watching this, whatever this was, before dinner with significant interest. Did Choi, is there any chance there was any overlap between Choi's observations and Choi doesn't gossip, he said. No, but Choi told you when I was in the building late, I said. And Somi noticed things, and Jun framed your email. Jun has a framed copy of your forward email on his desk. A pause, your colleagues are observant, he said. Going to be insufferable about this, I said. That seems likely, he said. Yuki, my best friend, has already sent me 17 texts since I told her about dinner, I said. What do they say? Variations on a theme, I said. The theme is I told you so. He looked at me across the table with that open expression that was new and private and mine. He said, tell you so? Emphatically, I said. I was the last to know. Last to know what? He said, and there was the dry warmth again, subsurface geothermal. That the glacier had a thermostat, I said. He looked at me for a long moment. Then full and real and unhurried, the rarest thing, he laughed, not the small controlled thing at the corner of his mouth. A real laugh, brief and quiet but actual, the kind that comes from a place nobody usually reaches. I memorized it immediately, filed it as the most valuable thing I had ever been present for. Ren, he said, first name, new. Yes, I said, I would like to do this again, he said. Dinner, this, more of this. I would also very much like that, I said, though I am officially informing you that I was right about the spring rolls and I expect that to be acknowledged in the vendor review. He looked at me. Filling ratio, I said. I want that on the record. It will be on the record, he said. With the patience of someone who has decided, completely and without ambiguity, to find this person delightful. Which was, I realized, sitting in the Not CEO restaurant in November, with the chalkboard menu and the shared dessert and 3 hours of the best conversation I'd had in a year, exactly what this had always been, not general kindness, not professional consideration, not cold CEO conducting HR-appropriate collegial outreach, something entirely specific. Something that had been from the first elevator and the 1 centimeter shift and the forward email and the cold coffee on a rooftop, aimed precisely, deliberately, exclusively at me. I kept the umbrella, I said, because I wanted a reason to talk to you again. He was still. Then I know, he said. You knew? I hoped, he said, which from him was the same thing. The restaurant was warm around us. Outside, it was cold, and I was thinking about a rooftop in November and the way the city looked from a distance, and how some buildings know what they want to be long before anyone gives them the space to be it. So do some people. The Nakamura Hotel opened in February. The lobby was everything I'd argued for and everything the ceiling light channels had promised when I'd sent notes to the contractor at 7 in the morning 6 months ago. The warm, dim luxury of it, the light moving through the space like something with purpose, it worked. It was exactly right. The client sent director Fujimoto an email with the word *extraordinary* in the subject line. I was at the opening with Somi and Jun, who had by this point achieved a state of permanently smug contentment about the entire situation. Jun's framed email had been joined on his desk by a photograph he'd taken at the company lunch, the moment with the spring rolls, where Kale and I were looking at each other across two people in a buffet line with what Jun described as a frankly alarming amount of subtext for a conversation about finger food. He called it his favorite piece of art. I had given up arguing. Kale arrived at the hotel opening late. He had 3 other obligations that evening, all of which I knew about because we had, over the past 3 months, developed the specific domestic knowledge of two people who exist significantly in each other's daily texture. He arrived and found me at the far end of the lobby near the ceiling light installation, standing in the space the way you stand in a space you made, feeling it breathe. He came and stood beside me. He did not touch me in professional settings. We were careful, as we had agreed to be, with the same deliberateness he brought to everything. But he was close, close enough, I said. He looked at the ceiling, at the light in the channels moving through the space in the specific warm way I had described to a heritage committee, or rather a hospitality client, 8 months ago. You were right, he said. I'm frequently right, I said. Yes, he said, which was not agreement exactly, it was something fonder than agreement. You are. Somi from across the room caught my eye with an expression of complete unsubtle joy and gave me a small wave. I gave her a look that said, please be normal. She gave me a look that said, absolutely not, your colleague, Kale said without looking at her. Somi, I said. She's thrilled about all of this. She's been thrilled about it since before I was. Choi is also thrilled, Kale said. I stared at him. Choi, your executive assistant who has the emotional display of someone defusing bombs. Smiled when I submitted the disclosure paperwork, Kale said. He smiled, with one side of his mouth, for approximately half a second. A pause. For Choi, this constitutes visible elation. I started laughing. He watched me laugh with the expression he'd been perfecting over 3 months, the open one, the real one, the one nobody would have recognized from any of those reviews or profiles or company legends because it wasn't available to rooms. It was available to me, only to me. That was the part I'd been slowest to understand. Not the umbrella or the emails or the rooftop or the deliberately not on the way elevator stop. Those were evidence. The real thing, the thing underneath all of it, was this: that somewhere in the space between a Monday elevator and a Tuesday rain and a Thursday rooftop and a night on the 14th floor, the most controlled person I had ever met had simply let me in, not generally, not as a professional development, not as a company culture initiative, me, specifically, the same way a space knows what it wants to be before you give it the chance. Hey, I said. Yes, he said. I'm glad I stuck my foot in the elevator, I said. He looked at me. That thing happened on his face, real and complete and no longer brief. So am I, he said. Outside, the February city was cold and bright and moving. Inside the lobby I had designed, the light did what it had always wanted to do, and the building breathed the way honest buildings breathe, like it had been waiting to become itself. Some spaces are like that, so as it turned out was he. If you liked this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. See you in next story.